incest, stalking, and frankly, a lot of other words I can't say on YouTube are just a taste of what the once beloved artist James Bear has been accused of. Formerly known for his comedic animations, James's offline antics have managed to take center stage and become the focal point of his online reputation, as his most prominent moments in his career reflect a wide variety of unsavory actions. But what truly happened? James Bear in current day professes his complete innocence, while others have already made up their minds about who James truly is. In this video, I seek to shed light on the true nature of the allegations, misconduct, and lies of James Bear. At the age of 15, on October 30th, 2014, James uploaded his first video to YouTube titled Jam World Zombie for a Bro. Many early viewers of James's channel were quick to point out the similarities to Ed's World, an already popular web animation series created by Ed Gould. This clear source of inspiration was something James made no effort in hiding. While it is not out of the ordinary for someone as young as James to be more derivative in their creative endeavors, he would eventually end the James World series due to frequent criticism relating to this fact. James would upload frequently for the next year with little success, earning himself a sub count of only 186 over a year after his first video. That said, in June of 2016, James would manage to reach 2,500 subscribers. This milestone would be achieved around the same time that the Jam World series would be discontinued, as James himself states the 4th episode of the show's 2nd season would never be released, a promise he followed through on. James would temporarily shift to creating fan animations for creators like Ed's World, Game Grumps, and Pyrocynical. James's animations were also frequently featured on the Pyrocynical channel, which only aided in the growth of his personal projects. However, nothing was more pivotal to his success than his Claire and James series, featuring his at the time girlfriend, Clarissa. This series would continue to provide steady growth to James's channel, which peaked with a series of installments relating to the No Nut November trend. These videos would see a level of success previously unachieved by James, and in current day, they remain as the most popular content on his channel, with a combined total of over 14 million views. These videos would catapult James's channel past the 100,000 subscriber mark, as he would continue to grow a following as time progressed. It is worth mentioning a relatively consistent pattern of sexual undertones in these animations, as they typically revolve around Clarissa's character in revealing outfits, or with an unnecessary focus on her assets. Suddenly, in March of 2022, the Claire and James series would stop using real voice acting, replacing the dialogue with Animal Crossing sound effects and text boxes. James claimed this was because he was sick and wanted to experiment with something new for the next season. However, with what we would soon learn about James and Claire's relationship, there may have been more context left out. On March 10th, 2022, Lalo Does Art took to Twitter to post the following callout. Friendly reminder that this guy his 9-year-old sister, admitted he did it publicly due to depression at the time, then removed everything relating to it once it died down. He started when he was 13, she was 9, and they kept at it until he was 15 or 16 and she was 11 or 12. It was never once, never twice, multiple times for years. That's all. Under this tweet would be a screenshot of a private message allegedly sent by James himself. It all began in February 2013, when I began to get a little friend called depression. I didn't know at the time, and I did something terrible. I had sex with my sister, which at the time I was 13 and she was 9. If it makes you feel better, I'm suffering emotionally, and I did it because of depression. Someone told me that depression can't make you do things, and we've been doing it till, I'm gonna say, till between 2015 and 2016, and I know it's still affecting me. In 2014, I got beat up outside in the cold winter night, and I got sick, and that sickness could have killed me. And in 2015, I got sick again, but while I was sick, I cried myself to sleep, and I began to lose friends. My depression kept getting to me. My dad emotionally abused me too, and so, January 23rd, 2016, I began to felt like and I nearly took my own life, but I didn't and went to sleep. My friend Alex, I told him on that day that I should, and I forgot to tell him that I'm gonna sleep, got worried and phoned the RCMP, and they took me to the hospital and they were checking on me to see if I'm okay. But I was. So yeah, I got sick again, but I'm okay. So yeah, that's what happened. But don't tell anyone, by the way. The claims made by James in this message are pretty horrifying.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a serious problem. A hacker problem. Over 2.9 billion records were stolen from national public data, which offers personal information to employers, private investigators, staffing agencies, and others doing background checks. These stolen records include a person's full name, address, date of birth, social security number, and phone number, along with alternate names and birth dates. And not only that, members of this devious hacker group have reportedly released this information for free online. I personally am terrified of the threat of these super hackers and what they pose to me, my team, and the sanctity of my anti-gooning movement. And that's not all. Data brokers are making a fortune selling your data data to robocallers, spammers, and others who want to learn more about you. Thankfully, I have the solution.
This video is sponsored by Aura. Aura can identify data brokers exposing your information and submit opt-out requests on your behalf. You see, data brokers are legally required to remove your info if you ask them to, but it can be so confusing to figure out how. Aura can handle it for you, and it also has much more. It's an all-in-one app with parental controls, antivirus, VPN, password management, identity theft insurance, and more.
If you're tired of picking up the phone to robo-scammers
To the point that you don't even want to answer, then Aura is for you. And wait, it's so much more.
Aura will personally alert me if they find my phone number or any other sensitive information that's been compromised online. They give me fast fraud alerts if anyone tries to use that data to access my credit cards or bank accounts.
They give me up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 million big ones, $5 million in identity theft insurance should the worst case scenario happen.
And it may.
And it's all at one amazing, affordable price.
You silly gooner, what are you waiting for? Stop leaving yourself vulnerable to data breaches. Go to my sponsor, aura.com/turkeytom to get a 14-day free trial and see how much of yours is really being sold.
To summarize, James claims to have had intercourse with his 9-year-old sister when he was 13. He also states that this began in February of 2013 and ended sometime between 2015 or 2016. This means that this was not a one-time occurrence, but rather a pattern of behavior that took place over the next 2 to 3 years. This detail is crucial, as the specifics relating to the timeline will be contradicted frequently by James himself. In this thread, a 182-page Google document is attached, which was posted on July 20th of 2017. The majority of this manifesto highlights seemingly inconsequential details relating to James's animations, sexual proclivities, and fetishes. The document exposes James's supposed big arm fetish, his demon fetish, and hilariously, what the writer labels as a not safe for work fetish. A notable example of this is a satirical comic strip of James voicing his complaints about censorship and female nudity. The writer reacts to this saying, "This is simply the most effed up person and disgusting thing I have ever seen in my life. James, only an effed up person like James would do this to Clarissa." Even Lalo himself believes the writer, whose surname is AwesomeAaron, is for the most part untrustworthy, stating the document only has validity in regards to the allegations related to his sister. Aaron makes it no secret he's a bit of a scorn lover, as Claire had broken up with him to start dating James instead. Even more damning are screenshots that revealed Aaron stating he would take down the document if his conditions were met. These conditions included a public apology from James, Claire breaking up with him, and Claire removing James's handle from her Twitter bio. It does not reflect well on Aaron that he would be willing to cover up these supposedly important subjects as long as his demands were met, and it reveals that this document was not created out of any moral responsibility, but rather it was a vitriolic act of revenge. It's safe to say that a majority of this document is incoherent and written by someone who seems to not have the best intentions. This fact, however, does not dismiss the apparent validity of James's alleged SA of his sister, something James would first respond to in 2020. With what's being brought up about me, I have to admit about the sister thing. It did happen, but only once when we were just kids, and it was consensual. I made a mistake when I was a kid, and I didn't know it was bad, but those mistakes I made all those years ago don't define who I am today. I'm a completely different person. I will be taking a break since the threats and the false accusations that have taken a huge toll on Claire and I's mental health. So yeah, I just wanted to clear the air on that front. Many red flags pop up in this statement, most notably that James claims it happened only once. This claim contradicts what he told Aaron in private, saying it first happened in 2013 and that they had been doing it up until sometime in 2015 and 16. James also claims that the interaction he had was consensual, a bizarre justification considering a 9-year-old is not capable of consenting to anything in any regard. Possibly the most strange claim made in this statement is that James didn't know it was bad. While it is true that people will make mistakes in their earlier years, having intercourse with your 9-year-old sister most certainly transcends the parameters of a simple mistake, and it's hard to believe James would plead ignorance on this front. James would also claim he did it because of depression in his private messages with Aaron. Once again, there is a reasonable argument to be made that people do not make the best decisions when they're not of sound mind. That being said, actions of this magnitude are not excusable, even with the added context of his alleged depression. James seemingly refuses to take any accountability in this statement, as he never expresses any remorse or regret for what he's done. Rather, he chooses to defend his character and even attempts to justify his actions. In response to these allegations resurfacing, James would post a thread to Twitter the following day. First of all, I would like to apologize to those who are upset and disgusted by some of the claims that are being thrown at me, by what appears to be a premeditated attack on me as a person. Second, I'm ashamed for what occurred in my past, and I'm working towards being a better human being. However, the claim of me being a pedo, and a is not true. The amount of harassment and threats that I've been receiving because of this is astronomical. Third, about my past, as much as it pains me to confront it, my past was never meant to be public knowledge and was leaked 5 years ago by a person who hated my guts for ridiculous reasons, which is why that document exists. It was a childish attempt on trying to make me break up with someone they liked and wanted back. As time went on, and after dealing with this situation on multiple occasions within the last 5 years of my life, I'm being labeled as a monster yet again, and I'm forced to respond to these people. My past, again, was never meant for anyone to hear and was a sick, twisted ploy to make me look bad, when really, these people, and including you reading this, don't know my full story. You don't know my personal life, you don't know me personally, and you will never get to know, because I don't need to tell you. I don't owe you any more attention, because I'm trying to be a better human being each passing day, and again, those who have ill will against me, I'm sorry, I'm flawed just like everyone else. The majority of this statement, rather than focusing on the substance of the claims, attempts to discredit their merit, something that many would find to be in poor taste. Not only had James violated his 9-year-old sister, but he wasn't even willing to be transparent and to take accountability with the respect this situation deserved. This theme would carry over in another response to the allegations, which was uploaded to his YouTube channel on April 1st. In this video, James would reaffirm that what had transpired between him and his sister was an isolated incident that only happened once.
As much as I don't want to talk about my past, what happened back then was an isolated issue. It only happened once when I was a minor. It was already dealt with. Those who are involved are fine and made amends.
James goes on to claim that no one has a right to judge his past and that the situation is nobody's business.
This situation is old news, and despite what you think about all of this, no one has any right to judge my past.
James then reflects on his childhood, stating it was abnormal and that he didn't have the proper resources, whatever that means. James also claims that these quality of life issues are part of why things happened. This sentiment is hard to understand, as many people who grow up in dysfunctional households or experience troubling events in their childhood do not resort to essaying their younger siblings. James also says specifically,
The things I said years ago do not represent who I am today as a person.
It isn't what was said by James that people have an issue with, rather it is the actions he claimed to have done. James seemingly avoids addressing what he's done to his sister throughout this video, never directly acknowledging the action itself in his response. He then goes on to apologize, not for what he did to his sister, but rather to the people who had to find out this way.
To everyone else who found out about my past this way, from the bottom of my heart, I am truly, truly sorry. This will be the last time I'll be talking about this situation publicly.
This would not be the last time James would publicly speak about this. In fact, 2 months later, on June 3rd, James would upload his final response. James begins his statement by acknowledging the vague nature of his previous responses, something he promises to not do in this response.
I've responded to this multiple times in the past, but I responded poorly. I assumed everyone already had all of the context, so my responses were often vague or were missing information. I also made some emotional responses that didn't properly convey the truth about the situation.
Yet, he describes what happened between his sister and himself as a sexual encounter with a family member. One could interpret this as James doing something with an older family member, which would make him appear as the victim, or perhaps a family member of the same age, which would level the playing field in terms of moral culpability. But James intentionally refuses to describe that it was with his younger sister, who was once again 9 years old, as this puts him at responsibility for what happened. James also reaffirms that the situation was an isolated incident, much like he did in his previous video response and his initial 2 responses on Twitter. This would be 4 times that James has contradicted the narrative he himself already established in the initial conversation with Aaron. James explains this inconsistency by saying,
I started telling my friends about it when I was 14 years old. Some of them told my story to others to try and embarrass me. After this happened, I've dramatized details when retelling the story. I changed certain parts because I wanted to see who would and wouldn't gossip about it. So this is why there are some conflicting accounts about what exactly happened. This is what led to some of the misinformation. The incident only happened once, but because of the multiple stories I've told, some people have been misled into believing that it happened multiple times. This isn't true.
Essentially, James is claiming he would tell people this story and intentionally give them false information, so if the story got out, he would know who was leaking the details. This line of thinking doesn't make much sense. If he was truly concerned about these details being leaked, why would he confide in a person he wasn't sure he could trust? Why give this information to people who you suspect may leak the details? It's far more likely that James was telling the truth in his messages with Aaron under the belief the information would not get out, and is now lying about the situation since it's become public. What James did is deplorable, but there's no denying that this action, being a one-time occurrence, is far less harmful than a repeated pattern of abuse. abuse. And James's framing of not understanding sex would be far more convincing. James seeks to abolish the narrative of it happening multiple times, as this fact makes it far more difficult to excuse himself of any wrongdoing. Much like his previous responses, the majority of this video is James attempting to garner sympathy rather than take accountability for what happened. He also frequently references the harassment and supposed threats he's received. James, rather than setting the record straight and taking accountability, chooses to frame his response in a way that anyone who's not informed might sympathize with him. It's an unsurprising tactic, as James seems to have a habitual victim complex. James would take a break and return a month later, with all uploads moving forward taking a notable hit in viewership and rarely breaking the 100,000 view mark. Not much would happen for the next year, and James would stop uploading altogether in May of 2023. On January 28th, 2024, James would change his Twitter bio to say 1999 to 2024, followed by a tweet simply stating goodbye. Many were unsure whether or not this meant that James had taken his own life, but regardless of this, the situation was far from over. Shortly after James would tweet out his final goodbye, his younger sister, Alicia, would make her first public statement on the situation on January 31st, 2024. I'm writing this doc to come forward with my abuse that my disgusting brother, James Bear, has done to me. Yes, I'm unfortunately his sister and I despise him greatly. Before any of you guys think this is another cassette girl situation, no, it's not. Unlike Lex, I actually have proof and everything lines up. Alicia would then show images, one of James's desk and another of James's YouTube play button, effectively proving that she was, at the very least, in some way related to James or lived in this house. She went on to say, at the age of 9, I was essayed by James. I don't remember much about it, but that's when it started. It continued for a long time, especially past 2016. James lied about that part when he addressed this. I wish I had done something to stop him, but I couldn't fight back. I was a weak young girl whose innocence was stolen by a sick bastard of a sibling. No one was there to protect me. I had no one to trust or get support from, and if I had said something to my parents, they probably would have gotten mad at me and not put James far away from me. One time in 2019, when I was lashing out at my mom, I told her what James did to me, and she was like, forget about it and move on, or some shit. Don't you know how damaging that was for me, to have my own mom say that to my face? Alicia then goes on to detail the extent of James's actions and reveals that she began developing an addiction to not safe for work material. She continues, saying, remember when I said James continued essaying me for years? Well, it was still happening at the height of his popularity when he released his No Nut November animation in late 2019. While you were watching it, I was being essayed. The last attempt of James essaying me was in September 2020 when he asked me to come near his bed, but I declined, so I went to another room. I always felt pressured into letting James do those horrible acts to me, even if I consented to it. No one taught me that it was wrong, nor could I avoid him. There were even some times where James said he would give me something in favor of letting him essay me. Most of those times, he wouldn't live up to his promise. I felt like a prostitute for even doing it in the first place. Closing thoughts, I want to stay as far away from James and to never look back at this abuse. I'll be leaving this Ko-Fi link below if anyone would like to help fund my escape. Alicia sheds light on a few key details. Most notably, she says that this pattern lasted far longer than James stated, taking place as late as 2020. She also claimed that her parents, specifically her mother, are aware of the situation and refuse to help her. This document would not remain on the surface web for long, as Alicia would suddenly delete it. Shortly after, Alicia would post the following to her Twitter account. Me and my family had to talk about the situation, and it would be best to not talk about it anymore. I caused nothing but stress among them, and they don't deserve it. I take full responsibility for my actions, especially with doxing them. I only did it because I was upset, but that's no excuse, and I won't do it ever again. So please, if you came to my profile to ask me anything about it, I suggest you don't bother. Many felt off-put by this, to say the least, and were under the belief that she was forced to retract her statement by James and their family. What's so peculiar is Alicia's claim of supposedly doxing her family. Make no mistake, there was no doxing involved in Alicia's statement. The supposed doxing is in reference to Alicia showing James's silver play button and his desk, neither of which reveal any sensitive information that would constitute a doxing attempt. Almost no one was convinced by Alicia's new statement. With what James himself had admitted, his frequent avoidance of the topic and his inconsistent recollection of events only led people to believe this entire statement was fabricated, and many walked away with the belief that the initial document was true. But for the time being, the story would run cold. Shortly after Alicia released her document, a Twitter user by the name of Captain Hugo would release their own document on James on February 5th, 2024. James Bear has been repeatedly harassing my friend Claire and our close friend group over several months, and we needed to speak up about it. We were working on this doc before James's sister released her doc, but we still think this is important to post. In recent years, Claire has tried to distance herself from James due to multiple cases of manipulation, privacy invasion, and targeted harassment. This led Claire to finally block and cut off contact with James, yet James continued to try and contact her her through alt accounts, her personal email, and her family's personal phone numbers. The document establishes a timeline of up to 9 years of contact between James and Claire, and despite dating for many years, the two would never manage to meet in person. The first bit of evidence provided are screenshots of James allegedly harassing Claire. To summarize this interaction, James lashes out and verbally abuses Claire for supposedly blowing him off. Claire tries to explain that she was preoccupied helping her family throw out furniture and wasn't able to answer his call. James seemingly cannot comprehend this and continues to swear at her and berate her. Claire, who seemingly got sick of this, would stop responding altogether. This caused James to spiral. "I'm tired of caring." "Is that so? Okay, so now you're gonna do this. You want my apology? Well, I'm sorry for being in such a bad mood when I literally waited and even tried calling your name but to find out you weren't nearby. I waited and waited just for you to come back and maybe we'll talk again. I'm sorry that I waited and didn't realize sooner that I should have left. Is that what you want me to say? Just to impress you? I'm tired of all of this. My family, my friends, everyone. I'm tired of everyone's bullcrap. And so this is what I get for treating you badly. That's usually how things go anyways. I piss someone off and they don't want to talk and they expect me to apologize. I ain't worth anything anymore." These messages do more than shed light on James's behavior behind the scenes. They show a pattern of behavior that correlates perfectly with James's previous responses, as he is incapable of taking accountability, fails to apologize properly for his actions, and postures himself as the victim however he can. The most important takeaway, however, is that it is almost certain behavior like this wasn't uncommon. Because of this pattern of abuse, Claire would attempt to distance herself from James, something he refused to accept even despite being blocked. James would proceed to harass Claire through email, as well as 2 burner Discord accounts under the names Ed and The Fool. "Why the hell did you block me? What did I do? You're acting very vindictive about all of this and you're not being fair. Why are you hurting me like this? I thought we were gonna be friends. Answer me now. Why are you going out of your way to bury me like this?" This email is followed by multiple screenshots from different Discord accounts of James desperately trying to communicate with Claire to no avail. These messages are vastly different from the diatribes demonstrated from James previously in the document, with him taking a much more calm and compassionate approach. Some might describe the contents of these messages as love bombing, an emotional manipulation tactic that involves giving someone excessive compliments, attention, or affection to eventually control them. These tactics, if they were used, however, did not work, and James was left with no other option than to begin contacting Claire's friends. My point of view of this started when James messaged me out of the blue on Christmas Day. I had added him as a friend a couple years ago when I saw him in another artist server, but we did not speak at all in DMs before, and he had changed his name and icon, so I did not have any idea who this was trying to speak with me. I still talked with him though, since he seemed lonely. After a short conversation about video games, James would reach out to Hugo once again on New Year's Eve. James would reveal his identity to Hugo, something he looked past, as he didn't have the full context of the situation. James would vent to Hugo about a supposed fight he had with someone he cared about, claiming it was sparked by wanting to join a Discord community they were in. James claims that in this server, people would gossip about him and give him labels that were supposedly untrue. James, in a moment of frustration, would lash out at this individual and call them a narcissist. This action made the server members hate James even more, despite supposedly apologizing. If it's not obvious, the person he's referring to is Claire. James would eventually mention that the server in question was owned by an individual named Cozy, and Hugo would reveal that he was an active member in the server. James and Hugo would eventually hop on a call, where James would give his side of the entire situation. Hugo notes that James's language in this call felt very manipulative. Regardless, Hugo would advise James to forget about the situation and just try to move on. Sometime later, Hugo would join a call with 2 server members named Chill and Dyer, where he would ask them about the situation. They essentially told me James was a complete liar and manipulator who constantly twisted the narrative to make himself out as doing nothing wrong, even when he was upsetting his girlfriend / Claire, and that he had tried messaging a bunch of other people on the server to find out what his girlfriend was doing and posting. Hugo would cease indulging James with conversation after this post, until the 18th of January, where he claimed he found urgent evidence of Cozy messing around with his girlfriend. Keep in mind, Claire had already broken up with James at this point. The evidence in question were screenshots of Claire's private messages, which showed a conversation between her and Cozy. Hugo, who was concerned, sought advice from Dyer on how to handle the situation. "He's upset, just block him. He's been harassing us for a good chunk of the day. I do not care what his issues are. The stuff he's saying is making me worry though. He talked about acquiring screenshots through a bluff on making Claire being honest with him. He's insane. Yes, he bullied her into screen sharing. He's an emotional abuser. He got blocked because of it. He has sent me said screenshots and I could care less. Trust me. It's better to cut your losses. He already got told by multiple people how to correct this behavior, but he's been projecting and doing the 'I've never been wrong' bit. He's trying to convince me of some but I don't care. Dyer would then share a message James had sent him. Claire is not to be trusted in this. She will lie at all costs to avoid any accountability or any kind of scrutiny, but that's not the thing I wanted to say. She's been cheating on me with a friend of yours, which is Cozy, and for a good while too. This isn't an isolated incident, since this is the third time she's done this, but I forgave her because I loved her and didn't want to lose her. But now, she seems to not give a damn about losing me, and she's been hurting my feelings. Left out important details in our argument she has told you guys. James would continue to expose Claire's actions to Dyer, in an attempt to posture himself as the victim. Dyer would not engage with this, which compelled James to begin spamming Hugo's direct messages. In these messages, James would claim that Dyer was giving Claire orders on how to handle the situation, labeling him as controlling. These screenshots provided do not appear to be orders, but rather a friend giving another friend advice on how to handle a difficult situation. This would frustrate Hugo, who would eventually respond with, "I think you're the only liar and controller here, and you've been lying to everyone including yourself. You flip-flop between feeling sorry for yourself and acting like you did nothing wrong. You emotionally abuse Claire and then act like it's her problem when she feels suicidal. You told me you were seeing a therapist, but from the way you've been acting, it's clear you weren't even truthful with them. I'm disappointed in you for not taking a break and working on your mental health like I suggested, and I'm disappointed in myself for trying to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to block you like the others, but I will mute you, and I don't want to hear from you until you actually work on yourself like I told you. Do better. I'm the liar. In what way did I lie? I've told you the truth about all of this, and yet somehow I'm still being held accountable for what? For her lying to me? I haven't done the source of what you're accusing me of. Clearly, you've been told a lie from whomever is saying this. I'm abusive? I know damn well how to tell the difference between emotional abuse and simply getting upset. What makes you believe that's the case? I know for a fact that I'm not that at all. This is coming from someone who was abused emotionally. No, you don't, dude. Jesus Christ. How dare you play the, well, actually, I was abused myself, so that makes us okay card. Get actual help. Stop trying to contact people in this group, and if I hear anything more about you attempting to get back at Claire, I will not hesitate to call you out on my 335,000 follower account. James would not heed Hugo's warning and continue to contact friends of Claire. A user by the name of Bizarre Joe would inform Hugo that James was continuing to harass people in the friend group. Hugo asked Dyer if they should go public, but held off to protect Claire and chose to wait for the proper moment. That moment would not take long to come, as James would create a Twitter account called You Know Cozy, a combination of the names You Know Clarissa and Cozy. The bio of this Twitter account displays both Claire and Cozy's Twitter handles, and underneath it reads, "A serial cheater and a heartbreaking Chad." There's also a link to a Netto Rare tag on a hentai website. For those uninformed, Netto Rare, also known as NTR, is a genre of not safe for work cuckold content where a protagonist's love interest or close associate is corrupted and taken away by an antagonist. James will frequently reference Claire's supposed betrayal of him as NTR or cucking. This account was almost certainly created by James, as he would post the screenshots Claire had given him. James would post multiple different conversations between Claire and Cozy with captions that almost seemed to relish in the concept of being cucked. James would also create fan art of Claire and Cozy, something he would do multiple times, all while continuing to harp on Claire's supposed cucking of James. James would even go as far as responding to Claire's tweets, praising her for being an NTR queen. Hugo alleges that James even went as far as to post about the situation on 4chan, which many users in the forum picked up on was most likely him. This claim, while it isn't confirmed, is almost certainly another example of James's inability to move on and allow the situation to die. It's also worth mentioning that James has done this in private to Claire directly, creating comic strips featuring Claire to vent about his feelings. These comic strips depict Claire as a heartless and cold harlot who enjoys mistreating and degrading James, while James himself is portrayed as a well-intentioned lover who's done nothing wrong and suffers at the hands of Claire. The document then switches to Cozy's perspective. Cozy knew from the start that the fool was actually James, and never directly responded to his messages. After a few messages of James attempting to engage in friendly conversation, he quickly shifted his tone, becoming much more combative and claiming Cozy made him want to off himself. James would continue to imply that Cozy was a homewrecker and was controlling Claire, but Cozy would continue to not respond. Due to this lack of communication, James would give up trying to communicate with Cozy altogether. The rest of the document details specific recounts from Dyer, Bizarre Joe, and Chill, and another anonymous individual. All of these stories paint a similar picture with screenshots to back it up. James will initiate these conversations in a friendly manner. He will then attempt to explain his side and attempt to convince Claire's friends that he is a victim of her. When the conversations don't go his way, he becomes more hostile and antagonistic in his approach. These diatribes usually consist of accusations towards Claire of manipulation and cheating, accusations towards Claire's friends of gaslighting and unfair treatment, paired together with James constantly playing the victim and refusing to accept that Claire simply doesn't want to be with him anymore. The final statement of this document reads, "James's awful and harassive behavior has been shown time and time again over the past couple years, with not just his repeated lies about the situation with Alicia, but also his prolonged manipulation of and attempted control over his ex-girlfriend Claire. She deserves to no longer have her name and image associated with such a deplorable person." Initially, the document ended there, but James simply would not allow the situation to die, prompting additional updates made in the coming days. The first edition was posted on February 6, which showed DMs James had sent to a user by the name of Simon Cross. These messages are very similar to the ones already showed, so for brevity's sake, we won't be diving too deep into them. James would also begin contacting people on a private burner account on Twitter, specifically targeting people who were followed by Hugo, in the hopes of garnering sympathy from people not privy to all of the details. The following day, a second edit would be made. This update would highlight screenshots of James's Twitter, allegedly posting around the time of Claire officially breaking up with him for good. These tweets would consist mostly of self-pity, resentment towards Claire, and suicidal ideation. A week later, on the 15th, the document will be updated again, showing that James had removed the years from his bio, proving that he was, in fact, still alive, and most likely active online. Another update from this would come on the 21st, showing that James was still actively attempting to garner support behind the scenes. However, things truly began to get interesting on the 1st of March, where a Twitter account under the name of Ringo posted a call-out thread directed towards Clarissa. Clarissa is a serial cheater. Hugo and his friends are not to be trusted. They are vehemently spreading misinformation in their efforts to dogpile, undermine, and smear James Bear's name along with actual evidence that was presented to them and their acquaintances. What they don't know is that she confessed that her infidelity took place to her longtime friends, some of whom are mutuals that I know. The thread continues, stating that Claire cheated on James with Cozy and had done similar things to other artists in the past. Ringo claims that serial cheating is a form of emotional abuse and that these actions took place from 2018 to 2024. It also shows screenshots of conversations between an anonymous victim of Claire and the Ed burner account, the same account owned by James. There is almost no doubt that the person behind the Ringo account is more than likely James himself, as no one else in this story so far has demonstrated any interest in the subject, aside from James. Not to mention, these screenshots come from one of James's burner accounts, which at the very least implies that James had some level of involvement in the creation of the thread. Most interesting, however, is that the thread also documents details relating to Alicia, James's sister. Speaking of James's past, his sister Alicia blatantly scammed everyone into believing her faulty, fabricated, unprofessionally written narrative that she made out of spite, and the only damning piece of evidence in the doc was her doxing her brother's personal items. During the height of the drama, and from what James explained to me, Hugo and his friend tried to ascertain information from his own sister to see if he was running a different account to message Clarissa, and Alicia told them he wasn't. This account, whether or not it truly belongs to James, is certainly in communication with him at the very least. Not only did James follow Ringo and retweet the thread on his main account, he would also share it with others in private messages. The Ringo account would eventually go private, stating, "James Bear does not own this account. I don't want anything to do with this anymore." It's quite strange that James did not simply address the document itself, and for months he would never directly respond. That is, until July 8th, 2024, when James would once again attempt to set the record straight. He would post a video titled Our Response, which sought to combat criticism in relation to his sister, as well as a Google document that attempted to set the record straight on his situation involving Claire. For the sake of structure, we'll be delving into the document first, and then shifting focus to the video response. On January 17th, 2024, I found out that Claire, at Clarissa, was sending flirtatious messages and inappropriate pictures, or in other words, cheated on me with multiple people behind my back for a very long time. And while some may think that she only did this once, her behavior wasn't an isolated case. This would be the third time of her doing this sort of thing. James would go on to detail an instance in February of 2018 where he first found out that Claire had been cheating on him. This individual, who James refers to as Shin, would have conversations with Claire that he felt crossed the line. In these conversations, they would flirt, send each other not safe for work content, and discuss sexual situations between the two of them. This claim is proven by a conversation between James and Claire where James references the event and Claire apologizes for it. In March of 2022, James would discover once again that Claire had been speaking sexually with Shin, this time sending them inappropriate pictures of herself. This is something Claire would apologize for, asserting her intentions to improve herself and remain with James. James uses this as evidence that Claire did not attempt to leave him over the years, as the document posted by Hugo claims. This seems like a stretch, however, as it doesn't definitively prove Claire hadn't tried prior or afterwards. All this section proves is that Claire had cheated and was open to working things out at that moment. There's no question that cheating is generally socially unacceptable and shouldn't be excused. That said, even if someone does cheat, that doesn't give anyone the right to harass them and their friends without consequence. And honestly, none of this cheating drama even needed to be made public in the first place. It's just not a matter of public interest. Even if James has his reasons for being upset, this information being revealed does nothing to excuse his behavior. The document goes on to detail the specifics of Claire's relationship with Cozy. Claire first mentioned Cozy on April 26 of 2022. James thought nothing of this initially, but as time passed, he began to feel as though Claire was growing distant, spending more time with with her friends on a Discord server he didn't have access to. He eventually asked Claire if he could befriend one of her friends, something this friend responded to with thanks, but no thanks. One night, Claire ended a call with James and told him that she was going to sleep. However, a few hours later, James noticed that Claire was still awake, as her Steam profile listed her as online. The next day, James was harboring frustration over this, but didn't seem to express it to Claire directly. This frustration led to a petty argument over what show they would watch. Claire allegedly would call James controlling and make a comment about him not trusting her friends. This would cause James to boil over and in a fit of anger said, "Stop being such a f***ing narcissist." This outburst would cause Claire to begin crying and leave the call. In a later discussion, Claire would express how James's accusations of narcissism made her feel suicidal. James, in his own words, was appalled by this, seeming to believe that she was lying about these feelings. He also notes that one of his friends told him that what she did was a big low blow. This is ironic considering James has weaponized thoughts of suicide multiple times, including in this document, but we'll get to that later. Following this, James would take it upon himself to reach out to one of Claire's friends, the aforementioned Dyer. His reasoning for this was so that he could attempt to trust her friends and befriend them himself. James knew of Dyer through a screenshot Claire had shared with him and was able to find them in a mutual Discord server they were both in. James was shot down almost immediately by Dyer and was called suspicious and bot-like. James was eventually able to get in contact with someone in the server. This person revealed to him that they had been bad-mouthing him and were potentially planning something awful. James was also given screenshots of Cozy sharing 2 videos posted by Illymation, one about meeting an abusive ex and one about leaving an abusive ex. James frames this as Cozy gaslighting her into thinking James was abusive and manipulating her into thinking he was a bad person. James would confront Claire about this, where Claire revealed she had vented to her friends about their argument and James called her a narcissist, something her friends labeled as verbal abuse. James goes on to point out the name of the server being a brothel named Wakanda, as well as a peculiar role on Claire's account, with 2 shooting stars and a skull in the middle. James somehow came to the conclusion that this role signifies an interest in cucking, something he concedes to have no proof of. Eventually, on the 26th of December, Claire and James would have a 5-hour call with a third party moderating. This moderator is identified as Penn in the document. In this call, Claire would express her desire to end the relationship, only to be convinced by James to take a month-long break and see where they stand at that point. James and Claire's perspective on the nature of this relationship would vary, as Claire had seemingly decided they had broken up on this call. James has already been accused of weaseling back into Claire's life before, so it's possible that James once again attempted to manipulate Claire into staying with him unsuccessfully, leading to this contradiction. Another anonymous individual, under the name Hugo, would reach out to Claire, as they were mutual friends who hadn't spoken in some time. This is where James would find out Claire had already made up her mind and had broken up with him. "I dumped him because he was basically making me do stuff I don't want to do. Kinda controlling, like making me screen share either on my phone or my PC to check DMs with others, and having his friend spy on me on a server that he isn't even on, and he wouldn't even give me space when I asked him, since we called almost every single day. But even though he said he does give space whenever we're not calling, he's still trying to text me while I wanted to do something fun or study." James and Claire would eventually get into another call on January 12th, where Claire would break up with James officially. Later on the 17th, James and Claire would speak on call once again, where James would break down crying and ask to see Discord messages she had between Dyer and Cozy. She didn't hesitate to show her messages with Dyer, but was a bit more hesitant to share her conversations with Cozy. James then threatened Claire, saying if she didn't show him the messages, he would go to her parents. He frames this as a bluff, but regardless of how serious he was, there's no doubt it was a threat. Claire, with no choice, would share the messages over Discord's screen sharing function. The content of these messages, as we already know, was deeply sexual in nature. Once again, while cheating isn't an honorable act by any means, James undoubtedly crossed a line by threatening Claire and forcing her to do something against her will. This fact would push Claire over the edge, and she would block James for good. This would be a catalyst for the chain of events already dissected previously in this video. James would spiral for the next 10 days, leading to January 28th, 2024, where James claims he attempted to take his own life. This would also be the same day he changed his Twitter bio and posted his ominous goodbye message. He provides proof of this attempt by showing a picture of his feet on the side of the road, claiming he intended to play in traffic. James then admits to creating the Cozy Twitter account and acknowledges that it was immature of him to do. Notably, he does not acknowledge the artwork he drew of Claire or Cozy, nor does he acknowledge his consistent references to him being cucked, simply referring to it as making stuff up about myself. As discussed previously, the creation of this account would be what provoked Hugo and the others to publish the document. James, however, denies being behind the Ringo account. He claims that evidence of his was leaked through that account and that he accepts responsibility for it. How exactly Ringo got that information is hard to understand, but James claims that whoever ran the account is irrelevant regardless. In the closing paragraphs of the document, James states his intentions to no longer engage publicly with this drama drama, and ends the document with thanks and well wishes to those who heard his side of the story. James has not proven himself to be innocent in any regard. All he succeeded in proving was that Claire was unfaithful to him. This additional context does not shift the narrative of his harassment, nor does it justify it. Essentially, this entire document is pointless and failed in terms of swaying public opinion. This is also something that James's Our Response video failed to accomplish. This response was quite different from previous responses James had made in the past, as this video would also feature James's sister, Alicia, who surprisingly attempted to defend her brother. James begins the video by stating that Alicia's claims are false and that she herself admitted she only came forward to make money so she could move out and be more independent. This claim is not backed up with any prior statements from Alicia herself, so it's unsure as to when exactly she said this. James goes on to address the accusations of silencing his sister, and believing no one would take his word, he allowed Alicia to speak for herself.
If my words on the matter aren't reaching out to anybody, or if nobody is willing to believe me, then perhaps my sister will speak on behalf of that.
This is Alicia speaking, or in other words, this is his sister speaking, and what my brother James is saying is true. First, I would like to give my deepest apology to everyone for spreading misinformation about my brother and about my own family. Truth be told, that I only came forward because I was only upset, and my reasons for being upset were petty and I had a falling out with a friend.
Alicia, who sought to gain independence financially, states that she chose to opportunistically run with the story despite it being untrue and her brother being innocent.
For years, I was always aware about the drama online towards my brother, and admittedly, I knew from the beginning that he was innocent, and unfortunately, I adopted this false history that the internet made about us, and it felt like I had more to gain by simply accepting it. So with that in mind, I jumped the gun with a post that not only destroyed what little bit of reputation my brother had left, but nearly ruined my family from within, thanks to the negative influence of internet drama.
This phrasing is strange, as it almost seems to imply that nothing happened between them at any point at all. The rest of this video is for the most part insignificant. Alicia takes full responsibility and apologizes for her negligence in the situation, and the video is wrapped up by James himself, who expresses his intentions of taking an indefinite hiatus. However, onlookers would not be convinced, with many commenters pointing out the discomforting atmosphere of the video, specifically during Alicia's response. Why does it sound like she's reading a script? Her voice sounds like AI. Either that or she's being held at gunpoint. You and your family definitely made her apologize and retract her statement. The evidence against you is ridiculous. How do you think anyone would believe this? These sentiments summarize the main takeaways from the video, believing Alicia was being forced to rescind her claims by her family. As a result, most who had been following the story went thoroughly unconvinced. And with this, James would take to Twitter once again to set the record straight. Now that there's an influx of hate comments, people are psychoanalyzing and trying to dismantle my response out of pure desperation to prove me wrong. There's even people claiming that my sister is AI, when clearly this is false. Along with this statement, James would post a video of the waveform of Alicia's recording. Comments regarding Alicia's response sounding AI generated were more hyperbolic than they were serious though. The main point people were trying to make was the lack of authenticity present in this statement. Many believe Alicia was reading off of a script that was written for her and was being forced to do so. And this image of the waveform does not disprove the possibility of that. James continues, saying the only reason why she sounded so nervous was because she didn't want people to know that she used the funds, the very same funds she claimed to use to escape her family, and bought PC parts with that money. That small bit of proof was literally within my recent response. Attached is a screenshot of Alicia's Ko-Fi link stating it was created to help her build a PC. James initially stated that Alicia was attempting to seek independence, but now he's implying Alicia's actual motives were to build a new computer. Posting the initial Ko-Fi link seems to imply that was her intention all along, yet it's not stated at any point in James's video response. This contradiction only adds to the endless mountain of inconsistencies on James's behalf. James goes on to post proof of this with a picture of Alicia's PC and an audio recording of James helping her build it. Neither of these prove that the money from the Ko-Fi link was used. Even in the screenshots of text conversations between Alicia and James discussing her PC build, it's never confirmed that the Ko-Fi money was used for this. James claims Alicia had $900 saved prior and that the graphics card she needed was $1,000. Even if she did use the money, it couldn't have been any more than a couple $100. It's also worth mentioning that the money she received may not have been enough to actually move out, and she simply didn't have the means to do so. So she used the money for something else. James goes on to address his initial response from 2020, where he admitted to having sex with his sister. My response in 2020 was just a basic PR response. None of it was ever genuine, or rather, this was part of my disingenuous comment about my responses in my deleted June 2022 response. However, it doesn't outright mean it's wrong, as I was also responding to a nullifying claim. Most of my responses up until recently were all PR-like, and people had their hand in helping me out. I never wanted to make anything that would come back to me later as a gotcha moment. However, some convinced me that it would help me out. I still went to therapy throughout 2022 and learned a lot from it, since my therapist actually understood what I was telling him, and my entire understanding within my personal experience has vastly changed. changed, and the situation was grossly misunderstood. If people thought a legitimate sex act took place, it never did. The implications were deceptive, but all there was is awkward cuddling and that's it. We grew up with broken lives and we were really young. So don't be mistaken, James is now claiming that nothing ever happened with his sister at all. He initially claimed to have had intercourse with her over the course of 2 or 3 years. He then changed his story and claimed that it happened only once, and now he's changed his story once again and claims that simply nothing happened at all. Most people simply don't buy this story, as James has proven nothing aside from the fact that he's an unreliable narrator. James closes the thread, stating he'll likely never be heard from again, and uncharacteristically takes blame for the situation, saying, "I'm the one to blame for my own path of self-destruction." James Bear has not been heard from since. The story of James Bear is truly like no other. Self-admittance to incest already puts his story in a category of its own, but his acts beyond that and refusal to take accountability adds an entirely new dimension. Pair that with his perpetual lying, flip-flopping, belly aching, and unrelenting victim mentality, James has postured himself as not only an irredeemable monster, but as the villain of one of the internet's biggest dumpster fires. Frankly, James Bear has no hope of return, as his career and reputation is damaged beyond repair. Due to his lies and contradictions, he will never be taken seriously in any future attempts to advocate for himself. Forever, he will be remembered as one of the internet's greatest horror stories. I've been Turkey Tom, thanks for watching, and until next time, leave me alone.
And once again, a special thanks to Aura for sponsoring today's video. Stolen Valor Sergeant, out.